comes from the Old Testament. Actually, a book from a book that we're studying on Wednesday nights, the adult class. And so I was previously familiar with some of this. So I expand on it and get lessons, some lessons for us today from this passage. The book of Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah was lived around the time that the nation of Israel was coming to an end. Israel had turned away from God more and more. Under the leadership of David and Solomon, the kingdom of Israel, Judah, had at its greatest extent, was a great power in the world at that time. But later on, as you read through the history, they continually were turning away from God. So it came to ultimatum, either turn back to God or be destroyed. That's sort of the situation that Isaiah is in here, and he's writing, prophesying to the leaders, the kings of Judah, warning them of the impending doom. God was going to turn his back on them, was not going to deliver them anymore. So this is sort of the context. Isaiah also, the book of Isaiah also has many, many scriptures of a future hope. It's actually called by some the fifth gospel. There's so much in there about the coming hope, even though Israel is going to be taken captive, destroyed. There was a future hope. A remnant was going to return. The promises God made throughout their history of bringing a Messiah. Those are mentioned in Isaiah also, along with many other prophets, the coming Messiah. So Isaiah probably has more than any other book in the Old Testament about the coming Messiah. So just a quick review, the first 5 books of the Bible, the books of the law, the Pentateuch, Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, are the first 5. But then the next 12 have to do with history of Israel, starting from the beginning of the nation to the final destroying of the nation, captivity into Babylon. It's all there in those 12 books. Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. But anyway, still have them memorized. There are some books in the Bible I don't have memorized yet. Minor prophets are a problem. Yeah, books of history. And actually, looking at ancient manuscripts and how many there are, the history of Israel is probably the most well documented of history we have in the whole world. Yet what I've learned about world history in school and whatever, it's not mentioned too much, very much compared to what should be mentioned if you looked at the document, how many documents there were showing these things are true. The history we have of Israel is really the best history of any country, histories of any country in the world. And verified by archaeology. Things mentioned in the Bible are continually being found as being true, as being actually happening, as actually existing. Cities, towns existed, they found them. Just many things. So anyway, this one passage here, we'll read in it in a minute, but we can get some lessons from it about the gentle waters. It mentions in Isaiah 8:5-8. We can get a message from the importance of receiving the gentle waters, consequences of refusing the gentle waters, as Israel did. We'll find out in reading the passage, and the road to gentle waters. So good lessons for us, or reminders, since probably most of us know about these things. Good reminders. So we'll read this in a minute. The background here, and we can go to the next slide, but and have more better picture of it. It's called the Gihon, if I pronounce it right, Gihon Spring, water flowing out of the ground from a spring, and it's the main source of water for all of Jerusalem. There's not as much today, I was reading, as there used to be, because of all the wells that are, more population, more wells. The water level has gone down, the water sub-level where you have to go to get water. So the spring doesn't produce as much as it used to, but it used to be able to feed water the whole population of Jerusalem, which was quite big, especially at festival times. It could be, in the New Testament times, could be up to millions within Jerusalem. So anyway, used to be quite a bit of water coming out of the spring. So that's a picture of it, and we'll see a little bit more pictures from it. But now I want to read through the passage or text, Isaiah 8:5-6. I gave a little bit of the review of the history of Israel, but at this time, Isaiah prophesied in history at the time of the kings Josiah, just not Josiah, Joram, I think it was. But anyway, the current king when he's writing at this time is Ahaz. The following one is Hezekiah. So this has to do with the time of King Ahaz of Judah. They were being threatened by, you wouldn't expect it, but they were being threatened by being invaded and captured by Israel. Does that make sense? Israel under Solomon, under Solomon's son, Rehoboam, had revolted against the nation. So 10 tribes revolted and became their own nation, Israel, and the other nation was called Judah, which included Judah and Benjamin, the tribes Judah and Benjamin. So now at this time, Israel is going to attack Judah. So King Ahaz of Judah, reigning in Jerusalem, and the rest of the people are very, very concerned about it. And Israel was making a deal with the next country north, Syria, that together they had combined forces and come and attack Judah and conquer Judah. So this was a great time of great concern for Judah, Ahaz the king. But the whole situation here is Ahaz was rejecting what the prophet Isaiah was saying. Isaiah gave a prophecy from the Lord saying, don't worry about those two countries. They're going to come to nothing. They're not going to win. But did Ahaz listen? No. He went to another god. He went to another country to get help. Help me from these two invading things. He went to the country of Assyria. It's called the land beyond the river, the Euphrates River, just north. We'll have a look at a map here in a second, but that's sort of the situation here. Ahaz and Judah has rejected God's advice. They didn't want to trust the living God. They wanted to have their own solution against these two invading countries, Israel and Syria. So we'll read it here. The Lord spoke to me again. This is Isaiah. Because this people have refused the waters of Shiloh. That's not to be confused with the city Shiloh, called Shiloh. It's a different thing. But Shiloh, that means sent in Hebrew. Shiloh, that flow gently and melt in fear before reason, which is Syria, and the son of Remaliah. That's the son of Remaliah was Pekah. I might got that wrong, but anyway, the king of Israel. So let's talk about two kings there. Therefore, behold, the Lord is bringing up against them the waters of the river, mighty and many, the king of Assyria in all his glory, and it will rise over all its channels and go over all its banks. And it will sweep on into Judah. It will flow and pass on, reaching even to the neck, and its outspread wings will fill the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel, which means God with us. God was with them, but he was turning their back on them. I think even the next chapter in Isaiah 9 goes into how prophecy of the Messiah, God is going to be with them still. You know, as Emmanuel is called, Jesus is called Emmanuel in the New Testament. But God was with them, but he's going to turn their back on them. And they're refusing the gentle waters of Shiloh. That represents God, you know, God's advice, his advice, God's messages. And they would not listen to them, but they rather turn to the land beyond the river. And in this passage, I don't think this Hebrew says Euphrates, but it's well understood. And even what some translations put in Euphrates when it's talking about the river. It's the big main river north of Israel. That was beyond it was Assyria and then Babylon. So anyway, they rejected the gentle flowing waters of Shiloh, turning to this mighty river. But God was going to bring that river against them, the people of that river. So it came to pass that those two nations that Ahaz, Judah was concerned about, were destroyed. Assyria acted fairly quickly and captured those nations, got rid of that threat to Judah. But what happens? This prophecy happened, came true. Assyria turned its aim at Judah after that. They didn't stop with the two countries. They came after Judah also. So it was a big error on Ahaz's part to get Assyria involved. It was a great nation. We heard about the story of Jonah. He went to Nineveh, capital of Assyria. So we know about the greatness of that kingdom. But it was powerful, and it went and conquered Judah as well. So that's what this prophecy is about. The mighty, strong nation that is going to come and overwhelm the land. I thought we'd just look at what is this. Israelites were familiar with this, but what is the Shiloh? What is the gentle waters of Shiloh? And what is this? What about this big river? Maybe we don't know too much about. But I got this map here. It's actually a modern day map, but I got it because it has rather an old one, because it has the Euphrates River highlighted there. much bigger than it actually is wide. That one shows about 20 miles wide. It's just a highlight. It shows where it goes. You see it just north of Syria, and on the other side of the river is Assyria. It's not labeled there, but and then of course down here is Judah and Israel right in here where Lebanon is. So that gives us an idea what we're talking about. There were invaders from the north. Judah's more toward the south, and Israel, both Israel and Syria are north of it coming down, and Assyria is even further north coming down. So that's sort of where we are in this prophecy. So the next picture is about it's called the Gihon Spring. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right or if there is a right pronunciation. If you follow rules of English, it's Gihon Spring, which has enough water, had enough water to water the whole city. And had a pool outside the city walls called the Pool of Shiloh. And so that's what Isaiah 8 is talking about when it mentions the gentle waters of Shiloh. And so we have the same picture before, then another picture. Next one just shows how it's continuing to flow down. In gentle waters, not a big rush. It's a spring coming out of the ground and just gently flowing. So that's referring to the gentle waters of Shiloh. God, the book of Isaiah uses that to represent God's loving protection and care, the gentle waters, which we all need in our lives. The gentle waters of Shiloh, coming to God, He will give us rest. And we'll go over a verse or two on that too. The Pool of Shiloh. Okay, and then a little more history. After King Ahaz, the next king in Judah was Hezekiah. And his concern for invaders led him to build a conduit from the spring into the inside of Jerusalem's walls. So if the enemy cut off their water or restricted their water, they could have a source of pool within the city walls. So actually ended up over time being two pools within Jerusalem coming from this Gihon spring. So anyway, the next king made this possible. Had his men go through solid rock, about 170 feet of solid rock underneath the ground, to bring the water from the spring into the city. And so the next picture sort of shows this. You can go there today and walk through it. But anyway, this shows a little child walking through the Hezekiah's tunnel. So it's one of the things you can observe if you ever go over there, walk through that tunnel. Conduit, I think it's called, from the spring that we saw under the walls of Jerusalem into Jerusalem. There's at least two pools in there. One of them is the pool that Jesus is mentioned in the book of John. We'll look at that for a second. But so he's in that pool there. In that stream. After looking at the picture a while, I noticed there is water flowing down there. He's got about 4 inches of water there on him. It looks like he got further wet too somehow. But it is possible to go there and see that today. I think it was blocked throughout history, but it's been cleared out again. And it's all there. So then the next picture shows us something. I think it's been remodeled and stuff, but it's the pool within Jerusalem. It comes from that spring, the Pool of Siloam. It's mentioned as Pool of Siloam in John chapter 9. In the Old Testament, it was the Pool of Shiloh, or the outside pool. Same thing. But yeah, as you can tell, it's probably been upgraded quite a bit. Look pretty nice there currently. But it's also mentioned in John chapter 9, where Jesus heals the man born blind. He told him he made some mud out of, he spit on the mud, made some clay type stuff and put it in his eyes, told him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. He did, and he came back seeing. And then there's a whole discourse there in John chapter 9. Eventually, the Pharisees complained because they did it on the Sabbath type of thing. But anyway, the man gave witness to Jesus, and then he was cast out of the synagogue, or the leading Jews rejected him because he claimed Jesus to be the Christ. And the leaders were definitely opposed to Jesus at that time. But okay, so that's the Pool of Siloam, where Jesus healed the blind man, born blind. Okay, and so these things have been demonstrated archaeologically. But there's one other thing here I wanted to read. Is the next page, the next slide says, this was found by some youth. Okay, I'll just read it. Discovered by youth in 1880, this 8th century BC Hebrew inscription tells of its dramatic construction of Hezekiah's I can't read it, tunnel. What's that? 1,700 foot. Oh, is that what it is? Okay. The Bible describes was designed to bring water into the city from the Gihon spring. This event corresponds with what is recorded, and it gives several verses. So this is actually more verification from archaeology of the truth of the Bible, and there is all sorts of archaeological evidence of the things in the Bible are true, and it's been accurate history. Okay, so that was a little bit about about the Pool of Siloam. But the other thing mentioned in our text was the Euphrates River. And so I have that on the next slide just to give us a review. This goes well with any world history we have today, secular, whatever. It's called the cradle of civilization. Mesopotamia means the land between two rivers. One of them is the Euphrates that we're talking about. The other one's the Tigris. And so that's where it is, the Mediterranean Sea there, Persian Gulf down there. It's actually, Mesopotamia runs through Iraq, is what the country is today. It's called the Fertile Crescent. The beginning of civilization agrees well with the Bible. World history agrees with the Bible there. That's where civilization started, and that's where basically we think the Garden of Eden was too. It mentions Tigris and Euphrates in Genesis, the Garden of Eden, flowing out of the Garden of Eden. Agrees well with the Bible, but that's where we are. In Mesopotamia, that's northern part is where Assyria is, and they're going to come across the river and invade Palestine, do the conquering there. A few years later, it doesn't take very long for Babylon to grow and become the great world power and overcome Assyria also, but that's later on. So anyway, just a few pictures of the Euphrates. it can be smooth. The next slide. This is kind of sort of smooth terrain running through. Looks like not too well-watered area. But it can go through rough terrain too. It starts up high like rivers do in mountainous areas on the next slide. And it can go through some rough terrain, it can become rough, a rough way. And as I mentioned in Isaiah, our text, it can flood too. The next slide, it can flood. Here we see a partially submerged town in the Euphrates in the flood time. And even recently, next slide, you see that it flooded the city there. Modern times. It's fairly modern because I see a new car over there, new style car. So it must be fairly recently. So the Euphrates can flood. So it's a good thing referenced in Isaiah 8 that comparing Assyria to this flooding river that was going to flood everything by conquering, mentioning that it would be conquering all the lands, including Judah. So it can flood. It can become very, very nasty river. Not, not like the gentle flowing rivers of the Shiloh. So definitely two comparisons there of how Israel was not trusting the gentle waters of God, but they were going to this other nation that was eventually going to flood over everything. So very descriptive and visual and reference in Isaiah 8. Okay, and then we're going to apply this in the three different things I mentioned: receiving the gentle waters, refusing the gentle waters, and the road to gentle waters. So that's what we're going to consider now. So first of all, receiving the gentle waters. We're talking about coming back to God. He is called the living water, the source of living water in our lives. We probably most remember the passage in John chapter 4 about the Samaritan woman. Jesus was coming from Judah into Israel or to Galilee. He had to go through Samaria, and Jews hated Samaritans. They wouldn't have any dealings with them. When Jesus was talking to this woman at the well, they wondered, why are you talking to her? Why? Because Jews don't have any dealings with Samaritans. But anyway, let's read it here. Jesus answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. It is the gentle waters from God. Living waters represented by spring of Shiloh, but that's God in general. Jesus is the source of our coming to God and to have the living water of God. And so the gospel message, living water from God. Samaritan woman was offered living water. And we know that from further on in the chapter that Samaritans invited him and he stayed, I think, 2 days there, and they all were believing that he was the Christ, the Son of God. So it's an encouraging chapter there. They were coming to him for the living water. And this gentle waters mentions rest too. It means rest, peace and rest. So we're going to talk just a little bit about peace and rest. The next verse about receiving gentle waters You have to have a heart that receives God. But this is a familiar verse too, verses Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So, very encouraging scripture. We can come to him for rest. That's what's represented by gentleness, gentle water. Uh, the waters that the nation of Judah was rejecting, they were going to go to Assyria, get their help rather than trusting God. And we want to be sure that we trust God and come to the gentle waters, the one that will deliver us from the flooding waters of the river. And then the next slide, refusing gentle waters, Jeremiah 17:13. And there's certainly others, but this is a good one. O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake thee shall be put to shame. Those who turn away from thee shall be written in the earth, for they have forsaken the Lord, the fountain of living water. So Jesus is the fountain of living water. Refusing those who will be put to shame, written in the earth, I think means die, buried in the earth. Because you don't want to forsake the source of living water. Jesus is the source of living water. He'll give us rest. The gentle waters will give you rest. So back to King Ahaz and Judah. There was reasons that Ahaz didn't want to accept Isaiah's word from God. They had been involved in idol worship, involved in evil. They didn't want to change from that. The false prophets were many, saying, God would never let Jerusalem be destroyed. God would never let Judah be destroyed. God is with you. Isaiah, the true prophet, one of the true prophets, was warning them against the false prophets. But who got in trouble? The true prophets got in trouble and persecuted. Isaiah was eventually killed by Judah, the nation of Judah. Other prophets were too, who told the truth, because the truth was hard to accept. But the false prophets, they were approved. They were bringing a good message. You will never be destroyed, type of thing. God is with you. But Ahaz had been trusting in idols and in nations and kings, and he didn't want to hear the message from God. Of course, we need to take that to heart. We don't want to trust the ideas of men and what we should believe and what we should do. We need to take the warnings from God and trust God for his answer. Of course, remember the verse in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Don't trust the understanding of men or your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. That's what you want, straight paths for your feet to be with God, with the gentle waters. So we want to accept wise advice. And not trust our own. And then one more on that. You're refusing gentle waters. There's other scriptures we could mention, but Proverbs 16:25. There is a way which seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. Might seem perfectly right to you. Everything's going to be okay. God's going to approve. But you're actually on the way to death. You need to believe God's word and obey it. Trust God. He'll deliver you. He'll help you. He'll give you rest. So never want to refuse those gentle waters. I just want to mention an example from my life. My bad decisions on Mount Adams. Me and my sons would go up to Mount Adams, try to climb it. Just one example here. We did it for about 10 different years. We were warned in some of the instructions when you get up there, you might get altitude sickness, make bad decisions. Well, I made a bad decision. I decided not to coming down. This wasn't coming up, going down the mountain. I said, you're on the path. Told my sons to keep following the path. I see a better way. It wasn't a better way. On the path they were on, they had to go down a little steep thing. I didn't want to go down that. But so I went down a different way. It looked nice. It got worse and worse. It wasn't nice. And I didn't want to climb back up. That's hard to the path. So I went cross country, across the mountain, ran into a huge area of big rocks and stuff, very hard to get through. And I got sick along the way. And wasn't a good choice. Just stick to the path. But eventually, after an hour or so delay, I saw my sons way over there. Here we are, come over here. Finally got back there, but it was not a good choice. And I remember that warning. You might make bad decisions if you get the altitude affecting you. I'm blaming it on that. It wasn't me. But anyway, example, follow the truth, follow the right way. Don't seek out your own understanding of the way. And then the next one is the road to gentle waters. Of course, you remember the Psalm 23. He leads me beside still waters. Psalm 23, the last part of that. He leads me beside still waters. That's what we want. We want to get to the gentle waters. We want to be led by them. I have a couple slides here from a book about how a shepherd reads the experienced shepherd has been has experience as a shepherd. He wrote a book. And this is a little bit out of that. Next slide. This is actually for further on in the psalm, but it has to do with finding still water. And the shepherd knows the way to the still water. So we need to follow Jesus, find those still waters. We need to give our lives to him. We need to follow him. So I'm just going to read just a little bit from the book here. Although sheep thrive in dry, semi-arid country, they still require water. They are not like some of the African gazelles, which can survive fairly well on the modest amount of moisture found in natural forage. It will be noticed that here again, the key or clue to where water can be obtained lies with the shepherd. It is he who knows where the best drinking places are. In fact, very often he is the one with much effort and industry has provided the watering places. And it is to these spots that he leads the flock. So he might go through difficulties, but with Jesus leading, he's leading us to those places of living water, of gentle water where we can have our thirst quenched, our spiritual thirst. He's the one. When sheep are thirsty, they become restless and set out in search of water to satisfy their thirst. If not led to the good water supplies of clean, pure water, they will often end up drinking from the polluted potholes where they pick up such internal parasites as nematodes, liver flukes, and other disease germs. And in precisely the same manner, Christ, our good shepherd, made it clear that thirsty souls of men and women can only be fully satisfied when their capacity and thirst for spiritual life is fully quenched by drawing on himself. Okay. So he can go to the next slide. He leads me beside the still waters, showing the shepherd and the sheep drinking there. Okay. The next slide, he's called the Lord of Peace in Thessalonians 3, 13 and 16. And I got this from the Christmas card that Carolyn set out to people, or the sheet. She used it and it was impressive to me. I'll read it here. And as for you, brothers, never tire of doing what is right. Now may the Lord of peace give himself give you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with all of you. So that was a very thoughtful verse. The peace at all times in every way. That doesn't seem to be my life, but I think the idea is through any trouble, he's always there. He's always there. You can come to him and you can have that peace. Somehow he does it. You know, trust everything to him. Pray to him. Beg, supplication, prayer, thankfulness to him in prayer. Somehow he brings the peace. He'll always bring the peace to you. That's the promise here. Peace at all times in every way. Nothing's left out. A couple more slides about the peace of God, which we're talking about gentle waters here. Peace of God. Judah did not get the peace of God when they rejected him and went another way, trusted an untrustworthy nation, and rejected Isaiah's prophecy for them, or the word of God to them, the promises of God, the gentle waters. They found out the hard way. So Philippians is a well-known verse, Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Have no anxiety about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will keep your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. You don't have to understand everything to have the peace of God. It's beyond understanding. When he gives, it's beyond understanding, beyond my explanation right now. When you do what he says here, it passes understanding. So if you don't understand, he still can give you the peace. And then he's also called the God of peace. Next slide. Further on in Philippians, it says, what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace will be with you. So the way for God of peace to be with you is to do. I have it highlighted there or underlined. Do. The importance of faith is it's a working faith. We can do so much, but then it's in faith that God will be with us. That's where the peace comes. God of peace will be with you when you go ahead in faith. You might not see the answer, you might know all the details or directions, but you can keep following him, doing what he says, as maybe illogical as it seems. Might not seem correct to your understanding, but do what he says. And with that faith in God that he will be the God of peace for you, he will bring that peace. But we have to do his will. Can't just sit where we are. I wonder, why don't you help me, God? We have to do his will. Have you done what he asked you to do? So that would be my encouragement at this time. to come to the gentle waters. Next slide. Just a repeat, but come to the gentle waters of Shiloh. That's where God is. That's where you get your peace and rest. And don't follow after all sorts of strange things or your own ideas. Trust in God, and you'll have those gentle waters and success in your life. Thank you.
Let's stand and close with a song as